I read this book, and I'm not going to really talk about it, but T.D. Jakes authored it, Reposition Yourself. And what was really good about the book to me was that and I pulled a couple of points out of some of the chapters, the courage to confront, facing your own indifference against the odds, overcoming the fact that life is not fair. And, sometimes we can't get beyond that fact that life is not fair. When we're in this environment and we believe we should be asked to bid, we believe that we were low, we believe that we were competitive, and we sometimes can't understand why we weren't brought back to the table to review our scope, or we just felt like that the situation was not fair. I hear that every single week, and I remind the folks that call me that life is not fair. You are correct. This should have happened. This should have happened. So now what do we do so that we don't spend so much time harboring on what's not fair versus what are we going to do to either change that situation or make one of those strategic decisions that will keep us out of those situations, or at least as best we can in the future. To whom much is given, much is required. Thought that was great. Then mail carriers, surviving the labels of success. So if you think about it and you like good motivational type literature, and this is a good one. It's a good one. So there was in the back of your packet, I think the last page is one page that I saw and took from a lawyer's office who sent it to me. And we were talking about additional work versus extra work, which was sort of interesting. Whether you are design, AE, or MEP, whatever that is, or CM, we get confronted with these two words: additional work versus extra work. I want to make sure, really quick, that we understood the difference between the two, and legally, because there's some court cases that address this. It says the two phrases in the title of this article would seem as they were synonymous with one another. However, in the legal world, whether work is determined by the courts to be additional work or extra work can be the difference between doing it for no additional compensation and being entitled to extra compensation for it. So, you need to know, and I'll tell you, I was in a meeting yesterday, and I think even last week, where in my mind, the clarity would have really helped those cases. Missouri courts have determined that additional work is work that was necessarily required in performance of the contract, entitling the party performing the additional work to no additional compensation. So how is that? How's that additional? I mean, that could happen in a number of ways. There could be some scope that you missed that was on the drawings. And in your mind, that's additional work when they come back to you and say, the drawings showed this. You said, but I didn't put that in there, right? If you bid the drawings, as a project manager, my response is you bought it. So in your mind, that's additional work. So the courts would not deem that to be extra compensation for you. Conversely, extra work is work that was entirely independent of the contract and not contemplated by the parties. Extra work entitles the party performing it to extra compensation for the work. Well, the easiest example that would be those work you were asked to do, overtime maybe, something that wasn't on the drawings or was really ambiguous, causing you not to put it in your scope, or just simply wasn't in the drawings on the front ends or any of the instruction to bidders. Well, you do extra compensation for that. So I just wanted to make sure we don't get those two confused, right? So extra, the E entitles you to compensation, right? The A, additional work, doesn't. Somebody's going to say that, but if you ever go to court, just understand that's how they're going to see it. Okay? And each one of these examples has a court case tied to it. So if you want to go and look that up, if you really feel like reading the cases. Because of the distinction drawn by the courts between the two similar phrases, I would generally recommend that contractors, in this case, whether you're a contractor or a design professional, use the phrase extra work when referring to the work that's outside of the scope of their contract and work that they expect to receive extra compensation for performing. Of course, a good way to minimize disputes, and that's generally what this will come down to, about whether work is extra or additional, is to have a clearly defined, and how often have we talked about a clearly defined scope, schedule, and budget. Scope of work that indicates precisely what work, labor, materials will be furnished and what work, labor, materials will not be furnished or will be furnished for an added charge. So it goes all the way back to what was or what wasn't in your bid and what you interpreted, what you didn't interpret, and what type of defensible position you might be in if, in fact, you feel there's a conflict between what was on the drawings or the bid documents and what's in your. So always take the extra time, Kim, I'm always tell you, when somebody calls you and you have a week to bid, that's an automatic no. There's no evaluation. That's an automatic no. I will always tell you that. And you have to make your own decision. But I'm going to tell you, you're going to really put yourself at risk. There's a reason why, in some cases, not all, a reason why, you're asked at the last minute. Someone said something about participation that they had to have. They want some good faith effort, so they get a number from you that goes on a good faith effort form. They never intend to use you, but they need that number to go on the good faith effort form. And that's not a political statement, but that's true. Right? So understand these circumstances that occur around you. Didn't mean to get off the point there. And we'll, for an added charge. So to avoid a misunderstanding, as you've heard me say before, always get an understanding. If you get that understanding, the chances are that you will not be in that extra work or even additional work situation. To bid or not to bid, how do you decide? How do you decide whether or not this RFP for design work or especially subcontractor work, or you were asked to bid it as a prime? We've gone through a number of scenarios over the last year or two in terms of breaking down what the opportunity looks like, what the opportunity costs look like, and what are some of the evaluating factors. Setting yourself up for success. You have a bid, and these may not be all of the, but as I thought through this, just sort of the first 5, 6, 10 things that came to my mind. If I was looking at it, if I was looking at a request or solicitation of some sort, I'm always thinking about my ability to be competitive based on historic data and where I am at that point. What are the risk factors in this job? What do I know about the job? If I don't know anything about it, I need to learn something about the job. Otherwise, I don't know how to control and mitigate my risk. What's the scope? I mean, am I being asked to look at something on a lump sum basis, a GMP basis? GMP is guaranteed maximum price, or T&M. Sometimes the up-level prime wants you to provide a TM price. That way they can control the dollars better, which may not necessarily be in your best interest, and sometimes it may be. But it's just something that you have to evaluate. Even in a T&M situation, understand what the scope is, how many floors you're going to be doing. What's the schedule? What's the man-hour projections? So that you don't get into a situation. And sometimes, you get a T&M for $200,000, but you never hit the $200,000 because they decided, well, it was T&M, so we're going to cut the time here, and we're going to do the rest of it with our own forces, right? So don't get that twisted in a way where you think that $200,000 is a lump sum. It's just a not to exceed number. So you may only do $100,000 worth of work. It's T&M. Understand that, because it doesn't look good when you say, well, I have a contract for $200,000. But it's clear in the contract that it's T&M. Then it makes us look like we don't understand the difference. So please understand the difference, okay? What are the completeness of the drawings? So hopefully you had an opportunity to look at some drawings. Never bid something if you don't have a chance to look at the drawings. If they say, you got 3 days, throw me a number. It's this 3 floors of this or 5 floors of this, give me a number. Send me the drawings. If you cannot read the drawings, that's another presentation. Instruction to bidders, right? Make sure if there's a spec, if there are no instructions to bidders, then that's your first question, right? When I did the presentation last year on how to be successful on large, complex projects, one of the first things I said was ask questions early and often, right? The first question is, what are the instructions to bidders? Those are your bidding instructions. Deliverables schedule. If it's design, there are deliverables, whether it be SD, DD, CD. What's the schedule for that? Can you meet that? The type of request, again, is it, how are they asking you to submit the proposal? What's the due date? Do you have sufficient prep time? I say again, if you don't, do not bid it. Bidding relationships, who's asking? Who's asking for the bid? Is it someone that you've bid to before, that you've had some relative success with, partnering with, being a sub-consultant or a subcontractor at some level? That's good. Always be wary of the people who are asking for the first time. No different than if you're an owner who's looking at a contractor that have never done work with them before. You're not likely to get that first job, right? If you're a prime CM or general contractor, you generally like to sub to the people you know that you like that have delivered for you, right? No different than what you have to look at when someone is asking you for a bid. Do I know these people? Will they harm me? Can they harm me, right? Will I get paid? So look beyond the price, right? Look at the bidding relationship. And if there is no bidding relationship, you may have to evaluate that a little bit different. Are there specific diversity or MBE program rules that have some past results that you can speak to, that you can look at and believe that this program will help you by way of growth and capacity building? If there's no program, then it's just no program. But if there is, evaluate that as well. Stop taking things at their face value. It's your responsibility to challenge, to look at the results, and make a determination that that particular project you've been asked to bid on doesn't fit your sweet spot. It's not within your business profile. If you don't have one, act like you have one. But you should have one. You should know every time you're asked to propose on something, whether or not that fits your sweet spot. That's like a business one-on-one. You should know that. And I think until we really start to move past some of these decisions and how we partner and how we get ourselves in situations where we can't get paid. We didn't say coming into the project that we couldn't meet payroll. We wait till we can't meet payroll, then we yell and scream. And then when it doesn't happen, then we say we are being harmed. But it's your responsibility, not the primes or the owners, to now, if you come in early and you explain your situations, many times, it had been my experience 14, 15 years ago, I went every time asking for money in certain increments, at the certain times of the month. Had nothing to do with pay when paid. I just wouldn't take the opportunity if I could not establish a payment plan so that I can make sure that my materials and payroll were covered. I just couldn't do it. and I'll hit that a little bit later. Sort of getting caught up in the fluff of the project and the opportunity, and after you get caught up in that, you get into the project and nobody knows your name anymore. And many of you have experienced that. So what really matters? When you talk about to bid or not to bid, that's only your decision. It's not mine. It's not anybody else's. It's only yours. So I'm just here to hopefully give you some thinking points. What in Marvin's mind, what really matters? As you think through your resources and your relevant demonstrated experience. Sometimes we go into things and it is our first experience, and that is how we grow. You just still have to understand that though the firm may not have relevant or demonstrated experience, it's always good to have someone on your team, on your staff. Maybe you have to go out and hire someone with some relevant experience. Makes a big difference. It helps you control your risk. It helps determine whether or not you can be successful or not. Does the bid opportunity fit your firm's core competency? That's that sweet spot, that I talked about. Know what your core competency is, because if you don't know that, it's just a bid opportunity to you. Market position. Why is it attractive to you? What's the growth impact, potentially for your business if you win this? Relation opportunity. Is it a one and done, or is it with someone that potentially you could be doing business with for 10 years? But ask that question. Is this a one and done? Nothing wrong with a one and done opportunity. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. Right? Am I right, Mike? Nothing wrong with that. One and done. I'll take them all day. Because if I don't have a good experience with you, you one and done anyway. Right? Just like they, I shouldn't say they, the market, whether it be owners or whether it be primes, right? It's always easy, to say, we don't want to do business with, we didn't have a good experience with them, so we're going to move on to another small business or establish another relationship. And we have to be able to do the same thing. I remember years ago, I was doing some work with Nations Bank. This is before Bank of America bought them. After Bank of America bought them, there was a facilities contract that Alberici had. And they decided, and I marketed this thing really, really hard. I mean, you talk about being on the 6th floor every month. I was down in 100 North Broadway, seemed like every week. But they elected not to put it out on the street. And they negotiated it with me. But where the deal went sour was, the folks that I had to deal with inside the bank, the gatekeepers, right? We know who they are. In dealing with the gatekeepers, really didn't want to be fair with the opportunity because they wanted Alberici to retain it. But they awarded it to us. I ultimately had to walk in, have a meeting with the president of Bank of America at that time for this region, and literally back out of the entire deal. They had folks at lunch and saying, what's wrong and what did we do wrong? I had a list of everything that went wrong, but I backed out. So we have to be able to make those assessments ourselves. If you're ever in that situation, don't make an excuse. If it's not working, it doesn't work. Sometimes you can make adjustments to it and it'll get better, and sometimes you make the adjustments and it doesn't get better, right? But that's okay. That's not the end of the world, right? Be comfortable in firing a client. Be comfortable, because if you have to do it, you have to make that decision, right? Can you be competitive? I hope you can. Are there any bonding requirements? SDI, subcontractor default. I was in a conversation yesterday about campus renewal, and there was a prime who said to the MBE, you can't do this scope because you cannot bond it, right? But the prime didn't know that the MBE was going to call me And so he said, I can't do this because I can't bond it. And I said, but you don't need bonding. He said, why don't I need bonding? Because they have a subcontractor default program on there. That's used in lieu of a bond. So why don't you go back and ask them if you qualify for the SDI program so that he'll know you don't need a bond. They knew he didn't need a bond, but that many times is what they use, and I'm saying they this time, what they use to exclude. You can't bond it. Well, why don't you just put me in the SDI program? Oh, I didn't think of that. Secondary considerations. I just mentioned that because I saw the bonding requirements in SDI. So know the difference between the two. You know, someone said, well, didn't need SDI because we have an OSIP program. Those two separate things. You know the difference. Do your research. Know the difference. Get that experience. Secondary considerations: relationship and experience with the prime bidders. Right? Get that, because you don't want to get in bed with people that you don't know. Literally. Timeline for bid proposal submittals. Do you have any competitors that are bidding it that you need to be aware of? Sometimes, we're not happy because we found out that they ask another MBE for numbers in addition to us. Why would we be upset about that? Why do we think we're the only one they should ask a number from? I'm still making an adjustment to that, because I talk to people all the time and say, I don't understand why they ask them for a number. Well, they're in business just like you, right? So put your best foot forward, put a good proposal together, put a good team together, and hopefully you have done some relationship building. Because if you haven't done any relationship building, I mean zero, I could pretty much tell you the outcome of that situation. Selection process. Know what the selection process is, if there is one. Now, sometimes they will tell you a selection process that is not the selection process, but they'll tell you something. But ask, what is the process? What happens post-bid? Will there be an interview? Will I get to sit down and walk through my scope versus what's on the drawings, with what's in and what's out? Ask those questions, right? Negotiation opportunities during post-bid process. Sometimes those occur, sometimes they don't, but they do exist, right? What's the scope, delivery, schedule, phasing? Many times there are phasing parts of the project that may not necessarily be outlined in the front ends. And when I say front ends, I'm talking about instruction to bidders. So always ask about those things. Schedule. Is there a schedule I can look at, that'll show, where my scope starts and stops? That's your responsibility to do that. Don't leave that up to the prime just to tell you that you want to see the schedule. Okay? If you can't read it, then call me. I'll help you read it. Bidding opportunity or fool's gold? Fool's gold often is confused with real gold. Some bidding opportunities are disguised as bidding opportunities. They were never a bid opportunity. It was just a ploy to get numbers, to put on a matrix, to satisfy good faith efforts. You can believe that. You don't have to believe that. Doesn't matter to me. That's reality. But know the difference. Know the difference. And there are ways you can find out. If you have a question, call us. Call us at the warehouse. You can call my cell. Let's work smarter. So a couple takeaways here. Avoid the smoke and mirrors. Avoid the fool's gold. Don't get caught in the opportunity hype. Don't get caught in the hype. It's a new hospital. It's a new football stadium. Do not get caught in the hype. One thing that I can guarantee in my role is I'm not going to let you get caught in the hype. I'm committed to it. I'm not going to let you get caught in the hype. When we start getting into some of those later phases, which won't be till late next year, and we start having conversations, I'm just not into the running after the fool's gold or being part of something that your capabilities do not align with the complexity of the project. That's just me. I've seen too many people go out of business, including myself. And so, we just don't want to get caught in that. Growth opportunity versus MBE goal or strategy. Know the difference. It's okay with MBE goals and strategies because that's where we are today in society and in this economic climate. But know whether or not that represents a growth opportunity for you or not. Just know the difference. It's, decisions become easier and more effective when you can, whether it's a, cost-benefit analysis or some other type of analysis. But when you do your own analysis, strategic alliance versus JV, sales marketing strategy, or what's your reality? Don't put your firm at risk. Are you really that hungry? I'm sure everybody would say, yeah, I am that hungry, right? But don't put your firm at any undue risk if you don't have to, right? Taking work at cost with no defined scope. That's irresponsible as a business owner. Taking work at cost, no defined scope. And it doesn't matter who it is. I don't care what partner you have. Ask them, are you taking this job at cost with no defined scope? And if they tell you that they are, I'm going to tell you right now, they're not telling you the truth. Let's train and mentor our staffs. Know what that opportunity cost is for that, right? No pricing on a post-bid basis or T&M that you don't really understand what you're pricing. So somebody missed a call on that. Usually they'll call you and say, can you do this for this number? Well, if you have the scope, you've got some drawings, and you understand what's in the front ends, if they exist, then you can look at it. But if you don't jump on it just because there's a phone call that says, we need you. Know whether or not, I'm not sure what I said here. I think I missed something on this last one. No project growth opportunity. Know whether or not that is going to be a growth opportunity for you. Seek new business outside of St. Louis. I'm going to keep hitting on that. I'm going to keep hitting that until more and more of you really start to explore that. I didn't say go do it, but right now, but start exploring it. Develop your own professional skill set. The more you can develop yourself individually, whether it's Kim or Anwar or Floyd or Joe, your individual professional value. To me, there is no dollar amount that I would try to put on what I think is my professional value. Albert Einstein said, would seek not to become a person of success, but rather seek to become a person of value. Be committed to achieving results. Don't be the status quo. You don't want to do that. Look at the market through the eyes of a business person, not just an MBE. Moving beyond day-to-day survival mentality. And, we could sit down at a round table and literally talk all day with some of this stuff. And I'd love to do that at some point on some of these really, really sensitive topics, because I think you guys have a lot to share. I like to think I have a lot to share. And just, Ramona, where's Ramona? Ramona used to call it each one, teach one. Each one, teach one. We sit down and we learn from one another. But define a plan. I don't care if you put it on a napkin. Some people say, oh, you got to have a business plan with all the financial projections and market studies, and, you got to understand all the trends. And, well, yeah, but a plan is a plan, right? If you're sitting at lunch, get that napkin and start writing down some of the things over the next 30, 60, 90 days that you feel like you really need to accomplish. Because if you put too many things down, you won't do any of them, right? So keep it short and achievable. What are short-term, long-term elements of that? Implementing that strategy, literally a day at a time. What are your break points? Got to have work within 90 days. I got to have this, and otherwise I'm going to be in trouble, right? Going to be in trouble, right? You start bleeding, You know, sharks see the blood in the water, right? I did a presentation one time that was called "Surviving in Shark-Infested Waters." I'm going to have to share that. It was good. We had a great time with it. But you know, what's your cash flow curve look like? The next 30, 60 to 90 days. I mean, I have a very small piece, but the concept remains the same. You know, whether you got 3 people, you know, in my case, you know, 3 or 4 people, or if you got 30 people, the concept is the same. You know, BJC, as big as they are, they will tell you, we have cash. And they'll say, we have cash for 6 months, or we have cash for the next 3 years. That means that if they didn't get one reimbursement for the next, whatever that period is, they have cash to make everything. And that, who knows what that time frame is now. I remember what it was, you know, 3 or 4 years ago when I was here. But so, you know, think about your business, your life in those terms. Even they tell you, you know, Susan Orman, if anybody watch her, she'll always tell you, you know, to have so much, you know, reserves on hand. You know what I mean? So they tell us that even in our personal life. If you don't have a line of credit, go get one. It doesn't have to be the biggest line of credit, but get one and use it responsibly, right? You know what your accounts receivables and your accounts payable are. You know, I was talking to someone yesterday who was trying to get some money, trying to get paid, right? And you know, that's one thing. I think I used to collect money better than I manage projects. I mean, and I think I'm still pretty good at it, but I don't have to do it like that anymore. But I said, you know, he was saying, you know, I was told, you know, we're gonna get paid this week. Okay, what day? You know, what time you going to get the check? Right? He said, well, it's sort of pay when paid. Nope, don't like to pay when paid. Call back. You know, oh, you know, the client is going to pay you directly. Okay, call the client. Who's in the accounting? Get the person's name. Call them. See if they can pull it. Go pick it up. That's how critical this is. You know, don't say I'm going to, no, don't need you to mail it, because something might happen, right? Something might happen. Go pick it up, if it's within driving range. You know what I mean? I remember driving to Columbia. Now, y'all might think this is funny. You know, I was doing some work for the University of Missouri, Columbia, and, you know, the check was ready. I didn't even want to do FedEx. I had a little light day that day, right? So I drove to Columbia. I mean, that is how critical cash flow is. And that's how we have to look at it. And it's good to know that we can laugh about it, because on those nights when we're waiting on that cash flow and we got payroll the next day, we're not laughing generally then, but we're walking all night. But it's nice that we can be comical with it, but understand the seriousness of it. If you don't have that banking relationship, make that banker your partner. Make him your partner. Make him meet with you, whether it be quarterly or monthly, you determine. But make sure he understands the work that you have on the books, what you're chasing, you know, what are the percentages of wins and losses based on this, not just what you got on the books. Let him know what you're chasing. Let him know you got some new people that you're looking to hire, that when this percentage of work comes in, I got this guy coming in. Oh, by the way, look at this guy's resume. He's a looker, ain't he? I'm gonna get this guy when I get this work, right? Make your banker your partner. I remember doing that to such a level it annoyed them. I need you to come and sit down and see what we're doing, because when I had a problem, and I did, you know, I said, you know, there's only so much in the bank. Payroll's coming tomorrow. I mean, I have to give these checks out. What can you do for me? I remember the first time he said, that just blew my mind. He said, send me an email and tell me the accounts receivable that you expect to get between now and the end of the month. Okay, I can do that. I did that, and he said, I'm going to cover your payroll. I'm going to cover the next 2 payrolls until that money comes in. And that was a relationship. That convinced me 100% that you could be in a relationship so close, right, that your banker would do things for you that almost look like he's breaking the rules. I don't know whether he broke the rules or not, but I'm glad he did, right? So accounts payable. Controlling your overhead staff versus, if you can't recover the cost of your overhead folks, you need to be asking yourself every day, do I need that person? Do I need that person? And stop being close to people just because we're close to people. You didn't go into business for that. Because at some point when it really starts to hit your personal assets and all of that, it's too late to go back. But there's cash flow that you could use because you have overhead staff that are not recoverable. Some should be, some shouldn't be. But the ones that are not, then you have to ask yourself, how long can I absorb this, right? How long am I going to allow this to leak? Other recurring overhead costs. You got to, what do they call it? You got to, well, and I'm thinking of healthcare when the power goes out, if you get a weather event and now your e-power kicks in and your emergency generator kicks in. Now you got to do what they call load shedding, right? That emergency generator is not going to run that entire hospital, but it's going to run certain critical systems within that hospital. And even beyond the critical systems in the hospital, you got to start load shedding, right? We're only going to run the air in this quadrant of the building. Y'all going to be hot for a little while, right? Load shedding. You got to do some load shedding. If you fail to load shed, that's mismanaging your company. If you don't take anything out of all of this, go back and ask yourself today, do I need to do any load shedding? Ask yourself. It could be yes, it could be no, but ask the question and then answer it. If the answer is yes, then you better load shed. You better pull some, what's today, Thursday? You better pull somebody in that office tomorrow. And I'm not, I think I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. But I can and will make a business decision. My question is, can you and will you? Work volume, 3 months, 12 months. What do you have out there? What do you have out there that you have on the books, that you're chasing, that you've won, but you haven't been notified officially that you got it? Right? If you want something, but maybe you haven't started it yet, you don't have your contract, you should be talking to your banker then. If you don't have a banker, go to that strategic partner that you're working with, right? Hopefully you've already had some preliminary discussions with them about cash flow. Go to them. Never be afraid to ask. Never be afraid to ask for money up front. I was pretty good at that. They call it mobilization, but it ain't really mobilization. It's just, money we need until the cash flow starts flowing. But we caught Sandra, we was in a meeting yesterday. They was mobilization. I said, well, that's not really mobilization. That's just what we call it. You know what I mean? Mobilization is something different, But, we like to coin it that. But you can call it whatever you want to. We need a check coming in, right? Pursuits. What are those projections? What are your best and worst case scenarios? You should know that. You should know that. I think one of the people that do that the best that I've seen, Floyd does that really well. It's a spreadsheet where he looks at everything, every pursuit. Whether or not it has an 80% chance or 20%, it's on the list, right? And that's what you show your banker and your partners, right? This says, not that we have the work, but it says we're diligent enough to go out and chase it, right? And we can communicate it, right? And here it is. And if we win 50% of it, this is that volume. Based on 50% of that volume, we already know what our overhead is, we know what our profit's gonna be. So wow, here's the profit from that. So now you're thinking so far ahead, they're saying, wow, right? What do I need to be profitable? So when we think about this whole day-to-day survival mentality, we will never get beyond that. There are levels that we get where it's not as critical of a thought, but there's certain things that I think go into high high growth early in your business. There's some people start a business and it just sort of goes like this, and so they never seem to really have to deal with that. Sometimes it's a family business that they take over. Second generation businesses have usually grown beyond this point, and some small businesses, they have access to significant financial resources that we don't have, and it takes years to grow that. Sometimes we never really grow it to our satisfaction. And so we have to then try to use, strategic partners, to help us with that. I'm going to keep going back to the strategic partners because they're the ones that are usually second and third generation businesses that have the ability to help us. But we don't ask. More importantly, we don't beg. I just never had a problem with it. I just didn't have a problem with it. If I needed 50 grand to get started on this. Now, of course, don't just go ask for 50 grand. I mean, take a spreadsheet with you to show, the source and use of the funds, right? And that 50 grand is what's going to hold you for the next 3 months. And this is what it's going to go for. So you got payroll, you've got some, initial costs for software, maybe a little training, maybe some other, what I mean? But go in and say, this is what I need, and this is why I need it. And now, they'll say, well, we don't know, but I need it. You want me on the project? I thought we were partners. I used to use that a lot. I did. I thought we were partners, Patience and perseverance. Getting beyond that day to day is patience at levels that I don't know that I could ever get to. I would aspire to certain levels of patience and perseverance. But, at the end of the day, I need what I need when I need it. And I have to have options, whether it's the bank or whether it's a partner, whether it's an angel investor. I went to an angel investor one time and I said, I need $100,000. Mike, you know what they are. I went to an angel investor. I said, I need $100,000. But I had my sheet with me. You don't go without the source and use of funds statement, right? And, we talked about kids and grandkids and, all my grandkids are fine. What about this $100,000? I need it. And this is what I need it for. This is how you'll get it back. Don't ask without knowing how it's coming back. And he said, when do you need the check? I said, today's Thursday. Friday too late? And I said, you didn't ask me any questions. You got any questions for me? And you know what he said? You didn't think I was going to say no, did you? Relationship. They can be a powerful thing. Successfully branding yourself in the marketplace. Make sure that you're constantly branding yourself and your company, right?